This is the Let's Get Real Estate Show with your host, Danielle Chason.
Full-time investor, strategic consultant, motivational coach, sought-after speaker,
and host of your #1 real estate investing show, Let's Get Real Estate,
where real people are doing real estate.
Hey everybody, it's Danielle Chason here, and we're back with the Let's Get Real Estate podcast. And today on the show, we got Andrew Hines in the house. Woo woo! Andrew, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, I'm excited about having you on because you're one of those guys that can talk about so many different things. You've got a construction company, GCing, you build new houses, you've done the BRRRR strategy, you've been doing this for a long time, you're investing down south now and all kinds of different stuff. And you totally geek out on the economy. So we can even touch on that and see what your take is on where things are going in 2024, which can be a bit of a scary outlook. But before we get into that though, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, maybe talk a little bit about what your past life was and how you got into real estate, because we all know nobody ever woke up one day in high school and said, I want to be a real estate investor. So, well, maybe that's changing though. I think maybe kids are starting to think that, but back in the day, that's not how it was. So how did you end up getting into real estate?
Well, so I went to Western University, and prior to doing that, I just remember my parents kind of generally struggling with money a bit and not having enough. And I looked at my dad worked a full-time job, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom who ran a home business, and they weren't able to make ends meet. So I kind of vowed to myself I would find a way to do things differently. And then I got to university, and I saw my friends paying in these student rentals, paying $500 a room, and I was running rough math, and I was coming up with absurd numbers that this landlord was making the property my friends were living in. And I'm like, man, if my parents just owned these 4 buildings, their life would have been forever different. And that was what sort of piqued my interest. And then it wasn't until I graduated and I wanted to do real estate, but I didn't know what to do. Fortunately, I was able to secure a teaching contract at Western for 2 years. And I taught introductory business to first-year students. And, I loved talking about entrepreneurship. My mom was a stay-at-home entrepreneur, and the thirst was still there for doing something of my own and wanting to build a business. And it was after that contract ended that I started dating my now wife, and she, her mom was a real estate investor, mortgage broker. And it was so funny because I remember we were having a conversation before I knew this, and she's like, well, what do you want to do now that you're done teaching? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to do something in real estate, but I really don't know what. I don't think I want to be a realtor, but I do want to do something in real estate. She's like, oh, my mom's a real estate investor. You should talk to her. And that was really where it started. So fast forward another, say, year, I think about a year after that, I had bought my first property, bought another one in that time frame. And started working as a mortgage agent, got into, seeing the industry, working with people who were investors and just learning. And I ran out of money on my own investment. So then I went down to the US and invested in Ohio for 15 grand a house, bought a couple, made some cash flow on one of them. The other one I took a huge loss on because the property manager was stealing my money. Oh. And so lots of learning there. And, simultaneously, I attempted a development in London, brought in a potential joint venture partner. And this was way before, duplex conversions and things you were allowed to do now. So I wanted to create a duplex, knock the one down, and make a purpose-built student rental. And, the community ganged up on me, made the front page of the newspaper, and got shut down. They passed an entire heritage control bylaw on a whole neighborhood because of something that I started.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. That's crazy.
So that was 2012 to 2013. And then, I was pretty broken at that point because I was pretty junior in my real estate career and took a couple of really hard knocks. And it wasn't until 2015 that I even attempted to do anything again. And that was when I went back to teach. I went back to teach in 2014 for one more year. They offered me another contract. I'm like, hey, I had fun doing that. I wouldn't mind going back to London, scoping out the real estate, and then using it as an opportunity. So that's what I did. I scoped out the real estate for that year, and then immediately after my teaching contract, I started buying up properties. And I bought the first one. I renovated it, added a small addition. I was hopeful I could keep it as a BRRRR, but I just wasn't able to get the mortgage sorted at the end of it. So I sold it. And then I tried again. I ended up selling a couple. And then eventually, by about a year later, I figured it out enough that I was doing some near perfect BRRRRs on these properties and keeping some. And then business partner and I formed a company to sell these properties. So we started buying them, renovating, selling them. And right around this time, I got asked to GC for a project to build 27 townhouses because I was doing my own stuff. And it's funny how things happen when you're in motion. And so then I started doing general contracting, built 27 towns in London, then another 15 in a place called Camlaki. And now I'm working on 126 house subdivision, like sort of production homes, much more difficult. I really like the townhouses. Those are way easier, but yeah, doing some of these type of houses. And I really wasn't loving where the market was going. So the student rental thing slowed down. I started to see that the prices of inventory went up and it wasn't nearly as attractive to me. So I kind of went into a holding pattern for a few years. And then in 2021, I bought a campground with some business partners, and we turned it into a glamping resort. Also in 2021, I started buying up properties in Florida. I started liquidating my London portfolio, student rentals, family rentals, and taking that money south because I saw what was happening in Canada and I wanted to diversify. I wanted to have a hedge against Canadian politics, Canadian insanity, where and when applicable. And
I don't know that the US
not
is
that
any better, though. I'm just saying.
they're not any better. They're just further behind, right? They're going the same direction. They're all going the same direction, but
Yeah.
just a little further behind. So, kind of enjoy that while we can is sort of my thought. No, there's no perfect place. Of course not. So yeah, that's presently what I'm into. We bought another cottage resort on the water in Tobermory this year, and we're just building out that hospitality business, building out what we're doing in Florida, and that's high level. I probably gave you way too much.
No, it's great because I think, you have your podcast and you're well known in our industry here and people know who you are, but I don't know if really people get to dive in a little bit more. And I actually want to ask you, where did you meet Jordan? Was it at Western? Because I don't know that I know that story either.
So Jordan actually was in my class, and it wasn't while she was my student, but
I was going to say, was it
after.
when you were teaching? Because that's just
No, and
wrong.
that's why I don't like even really getting into this because the problem when people are half listening is they misconstrue things.
Right. Or two
But
times
yeah,
listening. Yeah.
after she finished, so I played in a band downtown London, and I happened to run into her at the bar we played at, and so we played Friday nights and Sunday nights at this bar downtown, and got to talking one day in that summer. So it was the summer after we ended up connecting, and yeah, I know it. The circumstance is not one I really talk about that much because it can get misinterpreted, but yeah, so we've been together ever since.
Oh, so she was your groupie.
She was my groupie. That's correct.
The best
It's an
groupie
interesting,
ever.
yeah, great groupie.
So yeah, so listen, so you've just accomplished so much and you just focused on moving forward. Like you just said, it's funny how things happen when you're in motion. I mean, I wrote that down because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who go out there and they get the education, they say it doesn't work, but you're not moving. You have to be applying things. And you're a prime example of that. So like sharing your story, I mean, what I heard is like, hey, I went and I tried this. It didn't work out so much. You lost on one of the two properties in Ohio. One of them, the one that you lost on initially, like I think it's just the cost of tuition because when you lose money on a property, you learn a lot. So, what would you
Mhm.
say was the biggest takeaway from that property, from that investment? So, you lost some money on it. What was your biggest takeaway or the biggest lesson that you learned on that?
Well, I think that if I boiled it down, and I might answer this different from time to time, but if I boiled it down, it would be me wanting a deal to work, wanting an
Mm,
investment to work, and
mhm,
ignoring facts that were contrary to it working.
mhm,
I mean, if you really boil it down, I could say it was, me being too trusting of a property manager, but I have my gut feels. I had my gut feel. I knew how things were going, but I put myself in a position to be burned. And yeah, I mean that. So I would go back to wanting a deal to work, and I think a lot of investors force it. When they want something to work, they'll force it, and that's what I really aim never to do. And I try and listen to my gut the best I can when it comes to any deal. And I'll take some quiet time to myself and try and ask myself, what is my gut trying to tell me something here? What's my gut telling me? Is it telling me to do this deal or not? And that's tricky to sometimes figure out because, the numbers can look great. A project can look great. And it maybe genuinely was the right move to proceed with, but I just, for some reason, I have anxiety about making a move. And I think pretty much any time I've ever signed to buy a property ever, I've got a little bit of a feeling in my stomach. Maybe not more recently, but when we do these like bigger acquisitions and stuff, it's like, whoa, should I have done that?
Yeah.
And so you kind of got to discern between um, the feeling that any of us get when we take a step, that nervousness, and then also your gut feel trying to tell you whether you should do something or not. And that is a lesson that I don't know if I can teach. That comes with experience, being able to discern what your gut is telling you. And I don't think you should ever ignore your gut. I've learned not to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Don't ignore your gut. The red flags are there. And I think
Hmm.
that's a big part of a big mistake of what investors do is that they want something to work for whatever reason. They see something and they just want to make it work and they'll
Hmm.
bend the numbers to make it work or the
Yes, very
situation,
common.
right? And
Mhm.
that's where you get into
Yep.
trouble.
That's something I've been working on with some of my coaching students. And, like, times are challenging right now. Like the BRRRRs that used to work don't. And, oh, we looked at the market, the numbers in this market, and can't find a deal that works. Um, and I'll find them say, well, this actually seems pretty good. And it's only relatively good, but not actually good for what they wanted.
Hmm.
and, uh, and it can be frustrating. Right. And I get it. Like, this is why it's great to have some support, have some community, some people you talk to where you could say, hey, I'm leaning towards doing this deal. Shit, am I crazy?
Yeah.
and, if you have people who are knowledgeable and are in the industry and can bounce ideas off of you and vice versa, that could be really helpful.
So, other than finding good deals, which are hard to find, like to find numbers that work with the interest rates the way they are, it's been challenging. What other challenges are you finding that people are having in the market right now? Because everybody is getting very frustrated, right?
Yeah, like what are most people doing with their money right now? Like all these
Mhm.
people who were doing BRRRRs before, what are they doing right now? Um, Challenges in the market. I mean, I think in Ontario, there's that natural challenge with the landlord tenant board. I think a lot of people are just, they were in Ontario despite that, but now that Ontario doesn't really seem that great, they're now moving on. And so I guess the challenge that they're facing is how to enter a new market, how to invest at a distance, how to um, pick the right investment strategy when everything seems so foreign. If you're going to go into the U.S., I mean, to some people that's extremely daunting. If you're going to go into a different province, that could be very very daunting. But to me, those are some of the most logical moves. But I mean, even if you're getting 1% rule, your cash flow is not good anymore um, because of what's happened with the interest rates. So, getting creative, that's probably another challenge people have. But, I think a lot of people are coming to a consensus that uh, if you're going to make stuff work these days, it's going to be you're going to find really great deals, or you're going to run an active business that's attached to real estate. You're going to build out a business that allows you to own real estate, which is sort of the methodology I'm taking. Flips will still work. I think wholesaling can still work when wholesaling to flipping, and then of course active businesses like the Airbnb arbitrage also is still working for people. So I know you asked me about challenges, so I won't go too far into this.
No, it's good. I think it's important for people to understand. And I think this is where a lot of people are missing the mark with the changes in the economy. I mean, that's a variable that we need to change with in order to survive. So when
Hmm.
you were doing a strategy for 5 years, 6 years, whatever, and it was working great 3 years and it was working great, now all of a sudden it's not working and people are coming
Hmm.
back to what you were saying, where people are trying to force something to happen, it's not
Hmm.
working anymore. So you got to change the strategy because the environment is different. And so I love what you're saying as far as, the BRRRR methodology maybe isn't the one that is effective right now. Maybe going into more active real estate sorts of like flipping and wholesaling, that makes the most sense right now, because holding, maybe buying and holding maybe just doesn't make the most sense, right?
Plus, I think there's an opportunity, and no one can predict the future. But running an active business now, generating your cash flow, getting your now money, and then being ready to pounce when you find the right deals. Like the BRRRR could still work if you're buying at the right price, and it's just got a lot more difficult. But there's a lot of reasons we could get into why there's likely going to be a big supply hitting the market in the next couple of years, and that means more opportunity because equilibrium price is based on where supply and demand meet. So if there's way more supply, our price drops. So there's a lot to be said in my mind about focusing on what you can do now and create value and create money in the real estate industry, and keep an eye out for long-term investments that make sense to invest in now, and then also for long-term investments that may be ready for you in another year to 2 years time, or even 6 months from now. There are great deals out there now, but the number of motivated sellers is only going to grow, in my opinion.
Right. And I love what you said too about like having, so you have this active business, maybe you go into flipping or wholesaling, some other form of, and some people maybe have passive income, some money where you're creating passive income and
Hmm.
lending instead of putting it into real estate. Maybe you're
Hmm.
lending in real estate and doing second mortgages, but that buys you the time to look for those great deals.
They're
And
great
because
deals.
right
Yeah.
now it's patience, it's a waiting game, right? So you have to wait until you find the right deal. They're not as
Yeah.
readily available and as quick to find. So if you can do this
Yeah.
sort of active business where you put your money and your time somewhere else until you find those good deals, and then you can pounce on them when they show up. So you're not looking and getting frustrated that you're
Yeah.
doing nothing, just looking and getting nowhere. So this is a way to kind of merge the two. I love that. I want to circle back where
Yeah.
you were saying about the economy and how you
Hmm.
feel that there's indicators that there's going to be more supply coming onto the market. So let's touch on that a little bit because I would love to hear more about that, about your opinion on that.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, just kind of deductive reasoning, and I do follow some intelligent people who've had a similar sentiment, and it just helps me clarify my thinking on the matter. Well, I think that put it this way: we've got all these people who are in 2% mortgages, 3% mortgages coming up for renewal. People who took out mortgages in 18, they're now on renewal on their 5-year fixeds. Then 19, we're going to have more. Then at 2025, we're going to have the people in 2020. And then really the rates didn't start changing until the start of 2022. So as every single year, we have new investors who represent a very large portion of home buyers, are not going to have their rentals turning into cash negative. So as they start planning and they start, oh, well, let's get ready to list this, or let's start preparing to sell this property. There's going to be more and more of that. Then you're going to have your homeowners who, yes, they can re-amortize. There might be some things they can do, but a large number of them are going to start looking at their situation and say, we're going to need to move back in with family. We're going to need to sell this place and get a smaller one. uh, there's going to be a number of different things that they're going to do, but we're going to see a lot more families choosing to live together, which is going to affect artificially demand as well. So we're going to have supply increase because of all these factors. People are just going to list their properties because either A, they can't afford it, or B, they're cash flow negative on their rental, and it's no longer logical. There are so many people I know, and you must know the same, who have made the decision to go to the U.S. I've always been a little bit of a trailblazer with this kind of thing. For some reason, I do it first, and then a whole bunch of people do it. Not saying it's me, but I sort of saw the writing on the wall, and I see now the discussion more than not, when I speak with people, is they're looking at the U.S. or they're looking out of the country or they're looking at Alberta. But I don't really see the motive for Alberta as much as I did before. So yeah, this is why I say, like, as time continues to go by and interest rates stay where they are, unless they were to go down, we'll just see more and more inventory hit the market. Now, the other side of that equation is the international investors. It's the immigrants coming in. Of course, we still have a housing problem, and they will buy up some of that inventory. And this is why I constantly say we don't know exactly where things will land, but I do believe that there's still more to go in terms of motivated sellers and equilibrium price fall in the marketplace. So no guarantees, of course, because hey, they could crank immigration to 2 million and then you just suck up that supply. And all it does is it just takes the multi-gen Canadians out of the market. They're no longer homeowners. And where I really see the future of Ontario going is almost 100% institutional ownership. So you'll have like 90 to 95% institutional ownership of real estate as rentals. So it'll be a renter class, and then a landlord class, which is obviously much, much smaller. And yeah, long story of my view of the way things are.
No, I think it's great. I think it's important for people to see different perspectives. I know we're in the information age where people are consuming a lot of information. There's a lot of people at the beginning of midway through last year where they were like, it's okay, come middle of 2023, the rates are going to start going down again. So don't stress and this and that. That is not the case. I didn't think it would be the case back then when I heard it.
I didn't think it would.
Yeah, me neither. And this is somebody that is really smart that I follow on the economy. And this is the first time that I disagreed with him. And ultimately, here we are at the end of 2023, and rates are still slated to go up more. And I think we still got a ways to go before we're out of the woods. And you're right. One thing I want to mention that you said is that, when people start planning, the investors, for their refinances, they're going to maybe look to sell. And I think the problem with that is that most investors, and I want to put a call out there, if you have a property with really good rates, you need to run your numbers at least 6 months before your renewal, maybe even 9 months, and see where you're at with the renewal, where the mortgage is going to be. Most people don't find out until the time of renewal, and homeowners too, where they're like, oh my God, my mortgage just tripled. What just happened? And they're not ready for it and they panic, right? I think
Plan
it's
ahead
important.
for that stuff. Oh,
It's
for
important to
sure. But I
plan.
think a lot of investors are paying attention. They know where the rates are at, and they're thinking about it at least the ones I'm speaking with.
The investors in our world, Andrew, yes, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there who are not in our world, where they have a rental property and they know the
hmm
interest rates have gone up, but they maybe don't really
Yeah,
understand the implication of how bad it is, right? Until they see it on paper and they're like, what do you mean my mortgage is
that's
going up?
true.
Right?
That's true.
And those are the
And
ones that are going to sell because they don't know what to do, because they don't have the network
right.
and the support, right?
Yeah. So do you see why I say it'll be institutional ownership?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because
because they're
like
just going to get pushed out.
the little guy gets pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
The middle guy gets pushed out. The mammoth funds that are crony capitalists and working with politicians and they're getting super cheap money, they'll be able to come in and buy up these assets. But the middle class and the lower class, they won't have access to the same resources and the same ability to tolerate negative cash flow for X number of years to ultimately get into a position where it's profitable. They'll be looking and thinking more long term, knowing that they're getting a discount based on the way things are going. And so this is why it's so important, in my opinion, to be aware of what's happening and position yourself accordingly. Like, what are some of the things you'd want to do, the implications you'd want to make based on knowing that information? Well, one, I wouldn't want to be super highly leveraged. I'd want to take my time to make sure I built my portfolio in a way I could keep my leverage low. I could keep my cash flow higher relatively. And some of that may need to be driven with a lot of hustle and a lot of really active endeavors to make that happen in the short run. But I think that we need to be very realistic about where things are likely headed and not sugarcoat it, because then we can actually take action and make things better.
And exactly what you said, don't sugarcoat it. I think a lot of people are like, I remember last fall, I'm a part of a mastermind, and I said to everybody, look, guys, we had another interest rate hike. How's everybody doing? And everybody's like, oh yeah, we're good. We're good. I'm like, no, guys, you're not good. If you haven't looked at your numbers, don't tell me
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah.
Go back and look at your numbers. And I think a lot of people just are maybe reactive instead of being proactive. And this is a time where reactive people are really going to get burnt. You want to be proactive and be prepared for what's coming, for sure. I love what you said too about the small people getting kind of pushed out because they just don't have the resources. Even the small people, like the banks are being really tight with the small people. And that's another resource that's going to push them out. So if you're not prepared, the banks are going to be like, yeah, no, we're not going to re-amortize, or we're not going to give you more money. We're just not going to do that because you're a risk.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to be said about, though, like, what you put out there and good energy and, of positivity in the matter. And then, of course, taking action. Like, if there's no insurmountable task, like, there is always a way through. It's just a matter of making sure that you are being objective and and as we said, not sugarcoating, but then taking massive action to overcompensate for your challenge.
So you're saying it's a matter of being objective, which means
Mhm.
now we need to take emotion out of the equation. And so when people are starting to tread into dangerous waters because they're getting into cash flow negative positions, the you know the amount of equity that they have in their properties is going up because now they're maybe getting over leveraged because the values have dropped over time over the last 18 months or so. And so what advice would you give people who are maybe kind of panicking, or maybe not even panicking, but are scared? What advice do you have for them? Like, how would you guide them to take that emotion out, or how to withdraw that emotion so that they can
Yeah.
make a more objective decision to move forward?
I think it's normal human behavior to ignore a painful situation. So a lot of people, if they know their mortgage renewal is going to be ugly, they won't look at it, and they'd rather watch, I don't know, whatever's on Netflix. So that because of that, it makes the situation worse. And the best thing I could say to do that is although it's painful, is to face that head on. If the one thing you fear most, put that right square in your face, and don't allow yourself to take your focus off of it for at least a little bit, because then it'll allow you an opportunity to say, okay, it's here, I can't ignore it. How am I going to make this better? And that's where you'll start to feel better, is when you take action to hedge yourself, to help improve your situation, whatever it is you need to do. And we all have this, myself included. So there's things that all of us don't really want to look at because it's not their most favorite thing. It's the thing you might procrastinate on, but in the business we're in, you can't procrastinate on some of these things. You got to keep it front and center. So I would say my suggestion would be find a way to put those painful things, your top 5 concerns. Maybe don't start with all 5 at once, but pick one a day and say, I'm going to focus on this and spend 30 minutes today problem solving and planning on how I'm going to make this situation better. And if you were to do that, you'll find that it's actually empowering, because it gives you the confidence to know you're in control of your situation and you can change it.
No, I love that. That is great advice. You have to lean into it in order to you have to lean into it in order to resolve the issues and deal with it. You can't just bury your head in the sand. It just makes it worse, and you make your own bed, and it's already a tough situation. You don't want it to be worse because then it's even harder to get out of
Mhm.
at that time. So I
Mhm.
love that. I just came back from a mastermind with Craig Ballantyne, and one of the takeaways that I had from that was don't spend a level 1 attention on a level 10 problem,
Mhm.
because if you don't match it up, it's just never going to get resolved. And I think that's what people
Yeah.
do. The more pain there is, the more that gap is. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
level 8 problem, you're putting a level 5 attention, it's not really getting resolved, and it's kind
Yeah.
of hanging on for too long. But the more painful it is, you're going closer to 432 level 1,
Yeah.
right? And but you're right. So what do you do if somebody's really struggling with like pushing themselves to deal with that? Like, I know you're right, we all go through it. Like, how do you motivate yourself to attack something that you really don't even want to deal with? Like, is there something that you do, like
Yeah.
go for a walk or something? Is there something that you do?
I find journaling really helpful. And I used to do this. I used to get up at 4 a.m. voluntarily, so that I could just work through my miracle morning and journal and all that stuff. And I found that super helpful at gaining clarity. What is it I'm trying to do? Why? What are my concerns? Why? How can I make them better? How can I grow today? And unfiltered, just write down everything going through your head. That'd probably be a good start. And and it's like anything you can do to make yourself realize it's actually kind of enjoyable to fix a problem, rather, like in our heads when we're not doing it, we're perceiving that it will be painful to put attention on these challenging situations. But when in reality, when you finally do sit down on it and interrupt it and work through it, you'll actually enjoy that process, because you're making your situation better. You know that you're putting pieces in place, and you're proving to yourself, you're showing to yourself that it's not hopeless. Like it's not like I just need to ignore it and hope it goes away. Like I can actually just face it and take control.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And enjoy life. You can just rewrite the script, and instead of saying, oh my God, this is going to be hell trying to fix this, or I don't want to do this, it's going to be so painful, you say, oh my God, it's going to feel so good when I get through this. And then I'm
Yeah.
so excited to get this off my plate, right? And so if you
Mhm.
just flip the script a little bit and how you
Yeah.
look at it, I think that's it's pretty impactful. That's for
Well,
real.
and just even with your daily task list, like put your most important task that you have on your list, the one you would procrastinate the most on, whatever one you would procrastinate the most on, do that one first. And it'll just change the tone of everything else you're doing. And I wish I had the magic bullet. I think, of course you need to be getting your exercise. You need to be, eating right and sleeping. I'm still working on the sleeping side of things, but uh, you need to make sure that you're doing all that stuff so that you have the bandwidth to be able to process this stuff. But there's no one magic solution for everybody. I just think facing it, whichever way you might do that, is going to be the start to good things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's funny. I'm gonna go back to what you said about the sleep thing. So you were doing the 4 a.m. the morning miracle thing, and now you have a 2-year-old or soon to be 2 at home that's interrupting your patterns a little bit. Life happens, guys, and you have to deal with it,
Mhm.
right? And so ultimately, like, I just want to say for anybody who's listening to the podcast, like, yeah, there's Andrew's killing it out there. He's doing a lot of things, and I'm doing a lot of things, but we still have life to deal with. And so now your sleep patterns are disrupted, and that kind of throws off your game, and you don't have the same morning routine as you used to. How are you working through all of that and making sure that you still move the business forward, and you still get to work out, and you still get to have your me time? Because when you're grinding a business, it's tough. It's tough out there.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that one. Maybe other more experienced parents can tell me, but I do prioritize family. My wife sort of forces me to be home when I like to.
She's a
5
smart
p.m.
woman.
for
I
dinner.
love Jordan.
Yeah, 5 p.m. for dinner with my son. Actually, he eats a little earlier than that. We do bath time starting around 6. He's down by 7 to 7:30. And then after that, we clean up and this and that. And then I might have an hour to myself, a half hour, usually not an hour. Sometimes I go out to the garage and tinker for 15 minutes, something like that. That's kind of like my mental sanity. And then we end up, going down and uh, my son still sleeps in our bed and, for better or for worse. So he usually ends up starting to kick me awake by 4 or 4:30. And then I kind of spend the morning with him and I really enjoy that time. I love spending time with him. So it's great that I get to do that. And I'm usually into the office. I just have a place that we rent out down near the highway in Burlington. And it's great. This is where I host my podcast. And so I also have like a little home office area, which I'm going to fix up and just build out a bit more so that I can be a little closer to home, not spend that time driving and just, a little area to work out in the garage and things like that. So just little things that I can build in as daily habits. So I'm still working on that, but I'm slowly putting the pieces back together, and it is getting a little easier with my son too.
Well, I think, life happens, things happen. Maybe it's an aging parent. And you need to fix your calendar, your schedule in order to fit that
Mhm.
in. I think we just need to always just be fluid and mindful. It's like, okay, this is life
Mhm.
and you just got to make it work, right? And when you have a new
Yeah.
kid, sometimes it's a dog that is very demanding. I know somebody who has a dog I'm like, wow, I don't know if I could handle that. But yeah,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you just gotta make a shift and make it work. You gotta work with what you got, right? So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing all of that, because I think a lot of people, they see us and they see us on stage and they just don't see that we do have the same challenges that other people have to work with too, right? It's called life.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really important that you don't idolize or whatever. I don't know if anybody idolizes me, but they shouldn't.
I know they
I'm just a
do.
guy figuring it out, and hey, we all are.
Yeah. No, we all are. And we're just all in different parts of the journey. But, I don't know. I think killing it in real estate maybe affords you the right to be able to hire a nanny, and that can be helpful.
Yeah, we're working on that. We've had a really great nanny that's worked part time for us, which she's been helping a lot. We're trying to bring in somebody in more full time. Just working through that actually right now. And we tried an au pair from Germany. It lasted about a week, and then she decided it wasn't for her and went home. So yeah, like that's the thing. Like I just never could have imagined how much work having a son is. I had no
Mhm.
idea. It's like the biggest sacrifice anyone could ever make.
Hmm.
but the best thing ever too. And it's just my wife and I were joking. We're like, how is this a normal thing that people have kids?
I know. And it's funny because
Yeah.
somebody told me, like, actually it was my therapist who told me this. He's like, Danielle, you're just going to have to resolve yourself to the fact that being a parent is the least grateful job where or the least appreciated job in the world, where the kids don't show that appreciation. So you sacrifice, you give your time, you give,
Mhm.
finances, resources, all, I mean, you just give everything to your
Mhm.
kids, but they just never really fully appreciate it as you're raising them. I think it comes later.
Yeah,
But yeah, they just
sure.
don't get it when they're young. They just want you to be there for them and do for them and cater to them. And it's, sometimes it can be really challenging mentally, for sure. For sure.
But they somehow make it all right with the hugs and stuff. So
Absolutely.
I'm a big softie at the end of the day for all that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's why we get into real estate. So we can be there for them. So we have that freedom, that
Mhm.
time freedom and all of that. So I love
Yeah.
everything that you're doing. I love the messaging that you give, and you really are an inspiration. I mean, maybe you think that you shouldn't be idolized, but you really are an inspiration to everybody out there who wants to be in real estate. And you're a great leader and model for that. So I appreciate you for everything that you do, Andrew. I appreciate you for coming on the show. It was a great
Yeah.
conversation. Great conversation
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if there was anybody who, I wanted to say too, you have a book coming out, which is amazing. Amazing. I know the challenges in writing a book. So you've got a book coming out that's all about finding your path in real estate. It's about investing for Canadians. So if, what we're going to do when the book comes out, make sure you give us the link and we'll put that in the show notes. So if anybody's watching this
Sure.
after it's released, it'll be there. But ultimately, you've got lots going on. But if anybody wanted to reach out to you, find out more, your podcast you have as well. So if anybody wants to look up Andrew Hines' podcast, you can go on any of the platforms. He's all over the place. So definitely a great resource as
Mhm.
well. You've got so much on the go, so much on the go, and building your
I
family. It's
do.
amazing.
I do, yeah. Yeah, well, that's where team building comes in, right? Like you can't
Mhm.
do it all yourself. And that's one of the biggest things that's changed about today versus before. Now when you're getting into active businesses, instead of building a portfolio, you're building a team. You will end up building a portfolio too, but it's like one needs to come first. And the team in mine is an internal team. It's it's building my assistant and my operations manager and our whole team that we have up north on our hospitality sites. There's just so many people involved, but that's the thing that allows me to come home to my son at 5 o'clock.
It is so critical. I really have a big pet peeve for people like Donald Trump who says, I'm a self made this or I built this all myself, because
Mhm.
ultimately it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. You have to have a solid
Mhm.
team behind you. So maybe we'll have you back and talk about how you built your team and the things that you look for in building a
Sure.
team, because it is critical. I would love to talk more about that. But for
Sounds good.
now, yeah, we're out of time, sadly. We'll have to have an
All right.
Andrew
Well,
Hines part two.
sounds great. And yeah, for your guests, you've been on my podcast. They can check that out if they want to hear your side of the story.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, other than, like I said, there's the podcast and other stuff, how can they
Yeah.
reach out to you?
Yeah, Instagram at the Andrew Hines is probably the easiest place. I am on the other social platforms, usually with the same handle, but I don't really check them as much. That's my social media team. So, yeah,
Full
Instagram's probably the
disclosure.
easiest. Full disclosure, you may not be talking to me if you're on those platforms, but hey, I'll get the message. So don't hesitate if you want to reach out on those.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge, guys. So if you want to learn any more about Andrew, how to work with him, yeah, how to just work with him in any capacity as a student, as a partner, he's fully open to collaborating and partnering on things. So, and just a wealth of knowledge. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show, Andrew. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Well, this is Danielle Chason signing off for the Let's Get Real Estate podcast. This is where I bring to you real people doing real estate. Bye for now.